All right, today we are diving deep into the internet's invisible referees. I'm talking about the algorithms that decide in a blink of an eye what you can and can't say online.
So, have you ever had this happen? You post something, a video, a meme, whatever, and then a little while later, poof, it's just gone. Maybe you get a vague notification, maybe you get nothing at all. It just vanishes. Super frustrating, right? And it happens all the time.
So who is the one making that call? Well, more and more, it's not a person. It's an algorithm. Yep, these automated systems are the internet's invisible refs, and they're making millions, literally millions, of judgment calls every single second. They're deciding what stays up and what comes down.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the core conflict, IP versus participatory culture. Then we'll look at what happens when these algorithms get it wrong. After that, we'll dive into Europe's new digital rulebook, and finally, we'll ask the big question, are these new rules actually enough?
All right, first up, IP versus participatory culture, which is really the core conflict here. See, this whole system of online moderation, it's basically built on a huge clash between two really powerful ideas about what the internet is even for.
And look, this goes way beyond just catching spam or stuff that's obviously illegal. This is a deep philosophical debate. We're talking about who gets to control culture itself. Is it the original creators, or is it the communities that take that culture and remix it, reshape it, and make it their own?
So on one side, you've got intellectual property, or IP. This is all about protecting the original creator, making sure they get paid for their work and stopping people from just stealing it. But on the other side, you've got this idea of participatory culture. This side celebrates all the stuff we make online, the memes, the fan fiction, the parodies. It sees all that as a super important way we express ourselves.
And this idea of participatory culture is so important to understand. The gist is, we're not just sitting on the couch passively consuming media anymore. Nope, we are actively creating, sharing, and transforming content all the time. The line between the producer and the consumer, it's basically gone. And algorithms, well, they're stuck right in the middle of this massive tug of war.
So, what happens when you try to get a machine, a piece of code, to referee this incredibly complex human debate? Well, as you can probably guess, things can go sideways fast. Let's peel back the curtain and look inside this black box.
Okay, so platforms have a few main tools in their toolbox to handle moderation at scale. First, there's stuff like Content ID. Think of it as a digital fingerprint for copyrighted material. It scans every upload looking for a match. Then you have hash matching, which is another kind of digital signature, but it's used to find known illegal content. And of course, there's the big one. Machine learning. That's where an AI gets trained on mountains of data to try and predict what's against the rules.
But here's the massive problem. All of these systems have the same fundamental flaws. The biggest one, they have zero understanding of context. An algorithm can't tell the difference between a joke and a threat, or between hate speech and someone reporting on hate speech. They're also riddled with bias because they're trained on biased data, which means they often make mistakes that hurt marginalized communities. And because platforms are terrified of getting sued, these bots tend to just remove anything that's even slightly questionable. It's shoot first, ask questions later. And the worst part? It's a total black box. You almost never get a real reason why your stuff was taken down.
To really see how this plays out in the real world, we've got to talk about a famous case. You might have heard of it, the dancing baby.
So picture this. It's 2007. A mom posts a totally normal 29-second home video. It's just her toddler, dancing, or kind of wobbling around in the kitchen. And you can hear a Prince song playing kind of faintly in the background. Well, Universal Music Group saw this, or rather their automated system saw it. They immediately sent YouTube a takedown notice for copyright infringement. And YouTube, doing what it does, took the video down. But here's where it gets interesting. The mom, Stephanie Lenz, she decided to fight it. And that kicked off a legal battle that went on for nearly a decade. And the whole thing led to this landmark ruling from the courts. Basically, the court said, whoa, hold on a minute. Copyright holders can't just send automated takedown notices for everything. They actually have to consider if it's fair use before they hit send. And that was a massive win for everyone who creates and shares online.
So you've got algorithms making all these mistakes and legal fights taking forever. It's a mess, right? Well, regulators are finally starting to step in. And that brings us to Europe and their really ambitious plan to fix this, the Digital Services Act, or the DSA.
The DSA is a really big deal. I mean, it's one of the most important pieces of internet regulation we've seen anywhere. The whole point is to make the online world safer and more transparent, and to force the big platforms to actually take some responsibility for what's happening on their watch.
It really boils down to three main goals. First, more transparency. Platforms have to actually explain their rules and tell us how their algorithms work. Second, empowering users. You, the user, get a real legal right to challenge a takedown decision. And third, accountability. The really big platforms, they're now facing independent audits and have to prove they're thinking about the risks their services create.
Now, all of that sounds pretty good, right? But is it really enough, or is there a catch? Well, as it turns out, there are some pretty big questions and some serious criticisms being leveled against these new rules.
The thing is, the DSA isn't some magic fix, and a lot of critics are worried that in trying to solve one problem, it might actually be creating a whole new set of them. They're pointing to some pretty major blind spots that could backfire, big time.
There are three big worries that keep coming up. First, risks to journalism. The rules don't really distinguish between a professional journalist doing an investigation and, well, anyone else. That means important reporting could get shut down by an algorithm. Second, it could harm marginalized groups. A single set of rules for everyone sounds fair, but it can end up silencing minority voices when their conversations get mistaken for something harmful. And then there's the third one, and it's a biggie.
It's this idea of neoliberalism, and it's a scary thought. The argument goes like this. What happens if these powerful new tools built to protect people fall into the wrong hands? Could a future authoritarian government use the DSA's powers not for safety, but for mass censorship and state surveillance? It forces us to ask, are these regulations far-right proof?
And that really leaves us with the biggest question of all. In this constant battle between safety and free speech, between creator rights and public culture, who should actually get to write the rules? Should it be the tech companies, the algorithms they build, or our governments? There's no simple answer here, but it's a decision that affects every single one of us.